pushes me, he shoves my things out of my hand, and he steals my phone. He has now illegally searched and seized my phone. Talk about our week and get his feedback on some things that he'll be able to put in perspective for us. But first, I want to say that we have made contact with somebody who has agreed to help us with our camera work. And his name is Joe. We're going to call him Joe Q. And he is going to come out with us and film in Los Gatos and different places in Silicon Valley to help us do more transparency in what's going on in our courts, criminal, civil, and family courts, and what's going on with law enforcement agencies in this area. So thank you, Joe. Joe took me on a ride in a Tesla yesterday down the San Joaquin Valley, and we met some of the auditing folks out there, and it was a very interesting trip, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later. But while we were out and about, I realized that a lot of people were getting arrested for recording the police. And this has been shocking to me. I'm being prosecuted for recording the police. That video of what happened in the court file room is up on my YouTube page. And so I started to realize from your comments and your emails that we're not doing a good enough job of explaining what's going on. And I think the most important issue to talk about right now is kind of our Fourth Amendment right and what that means to all of us as applied in our criminal courts and our family courts. And the best way to describe it, and I'm going to do a formal video on this later when I get some help with some editing, but the best way to describe it is related to fruit from the poisonous tree. So you're going to help me out a little bit and talk to me about what this means in criminal court, the fruit from the poisonous tree. So
right, and it has to do with search and seizure. That's what we're talking about.
Right. So in the court file room, the police officer, Gomez, seized my phone, told me to stop recording, seized my phone, and searched my phone. And I'm now being criminally prosecuted. So it's attorney. Here's my phone in Officer Gomez's hand. He has literally turned it on by searching it. This is causing me extreme anxiety. My sources, my research, 5 years of research and interviews and recordings are on that phone. Officer Gomez is withholding it from me like a parent trying to punish a child. Here he is now, going through my phone. He's literally turning it on and searching my phone, looking at my photographs. I don't even know what he ever saw. Look at him. He's continuing to do it. He's searching my phone. He has no warrant, no authorization, no justification to do this. This is going on all over my phone. Any evidence that he got from my phone would not be relevant.
Right, so that was technically an illegal search. So anything, because there was no search warrant, and so anything that happens after that point makes the tree poisonous, and so that fruit is theoretically, they can't use it against you, right?
Theoretically. But we're seeing people being prosecuted for recording and arrested for recording police officers. They then get into the criminal justice system. And I did call on a video I'm going to do something about a little bit later related to the Gilroy police, and I called the attorney that the auditor talked about in the video, and she said yes, he was arrested and he was prosecuted, and eventually the district attorney dropped the charges. And that would be the Santa Clara County District Attorney, the same one that has been prosecuting me for 2 years. And so, you know, a lot of this, I think the best way to describe it is a lot of people have DUIs. I've been shocked to know how many people have been arrested for DUIs. When you get arrested for a DUI, there's a section in Joseph Tolley's book about that. He says you should not be consenting to the field sobriety test, and that you should only allow them to do a blood test. You shouldn't allow them to do a breathalyzer. You shouldn't allow them to do field sobriety because that's objective.
And they don't have a right. The key thing is they don't even have a right to make you do any of those other tests other than a blood test under the law.
Right. So
everything else is voluntary.
And so most of us try to be cooperative with the police, especially when we haven't had a lot of encounters with them. And so they pull us over and want to do a breathalyzer. And then people will find themselves in court and they're arguing against the police officers who said in their view they viewed you as reasonably being under the influence, and that starts your whole criminal case. So on the illegal search and seizures, if I understand this correctly, when you're consenting to a breathalyzer or a field sobriety check, you're consenting to that officer searching you and investigating you, and that then becomes in their police report as a fact, and they are a witness against you. That's what I have observed in court. Is that what you believe happens too?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, I mean, they'll search. If you're consenting to one thing, you're pretty much consenting to everything, and unless you're recording it or something.
So that brings me to how much these attorneys are making too. And my attorney, for filming in that courthouse, instead of them going after Officer Gomez for taking my phone and searching it, they went after me. They're prosecuting me, and I paid an attorney $20,000 to represent me in that case. It's taken 2 years, and he just withdrew and kept my money because we had a flat fee agreement. His name is Dimitri Stadlin. I filed bar complaints against him. He violated his fee agreement. They just do whatever they want. The bar isn't doing anything about these attorneys. And I think that a lot of the auditors that are getting arrested are telling me that they're spending anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 on attorneys to help them get out of these recording arrests, which they should never be prosecuted for in the first place.
And that's something that the mainstream media doesn't cover enough. This is something we need to make them more aware of. Because there'll be an article about somebody that got off, but they will rarely mention, how much money it cost that person to prove they were innocent.
Right.
And then on the other side of it is how much money the government spent to bring a bogus case against somebody, because that's money too. So on both sides there's money involved, but that usually gets just skimmed over in terms of, and it just goes to become whether was the person guilty or innocent or whatever. But nobody points out, how much it costs both sides to do it.
Well, and that's what a lot of these auditors are telling me, is that they get arrested and then they have to hire an attorney, and there's always a retainer of anywhere from $3,500 to $20,000, and then the district attorneys are dropping the cases. But it really seems to me that the police officers not doing their job and making these arrests based on recording are costing taxpayers a lot more money, because the district attorney is charging it. It's taking court time. It's clogging the courts. If you have money to be able to hire a private attorney, you pay for it. But if you don't, taxpayers are going to pay for you to get a public defender or an IDO. I paid my first attorney $20,000 off a loan I got, then I didn't have any more money to borrow, and now taxpayers are paying for my defense, and they're going to send it to a 2-week trial.
Yeah, and if you go to court, like bring a civil case against somebody that's considered frivolous or make frivolous motions, they'll fine you. It's called a sanction, and they'll fine you money for doing that. It's punishment.
I've been sanctioned.
It's called a misuse of court resources. But when the prosecutor does it, when the local district attorney does it, it should be considered the same thing. It should be just as bad. They're misusing court resources. They're tying up court time. They're tying up judges. They're tying up court employees. But there's no accountability for when they do that and waste all that time and resources.
And the other thing that I've noticed is that in all of these cases, there is such pressure on everyone to take a plea. And I got pressured to take a plea early on for violating a local rule. The district attorney asked me to take a plea of 2 years probation and staying out of the courthouses for 2 years. And I thought to myself, well, I actually said a very bad word to my attorney to tell them what to do with that plea offer. But I realized that a lot of people get into court, they're paying this money to attorneys, they're risking their freedom, they're worried about going to jail, and so they take a plea. And if you look in the statistics for each county of how many cases are pled out, so not only is the cop arresting for recording the police, then the district attorney is prosecuting it, and ultimately what happens is you take a plea, that means you're consenting to being guilty, and it's clogging the courts, and then you're on probation. You have a criminal record for something you should have never even been arrested for in the first place. And if they had to take it to trial, they would probably lose, because the fruit from the poisonous tree and the laws would have precluded them from doing anything that would actually get you convicted in front of a jury. So, I mean, the one thing that I'm seeing over and over again is, especially with auditors, they're getting arrested, they're getting worried, their families are worried, and they're taking a plea because they're scared. And what I would say is, I'm not taking a plea. I'm not guilty, and that police officer was guilty. I'm not taking a plea, and I would encourage all of you to start knowing your rights, questioning what's being done to you by the police officers, the courts, and the local district attorney, and don't take the plea. And put pressure on your public defenders to hold these district attorneys and police officers accountable, because they're the ones that should be holding them accountable too.
And that's another audit subject that we've seen someone up here in Santa Clara County do, is auditing the public defender system and the court-appointed criminal defense attorney system that they use in some counties. You know, some of those attorneys just do not do their jobs. They don't defend the people. They just push them to take a plea, and they're not doing their job either. We've seen some pretty good auditing videos around Santa Clara County where they chase down a district public defender attorney, or even go to his office and try to interview him and say, hey, you know, are you really doing your job? Why are you pushing everybody to take all these plea deals?
Well, and a lot of that too has to accountability of the judges. The judges are protecting the police officers and the attorneys are protecting the judges, because the attorneys should be calling out the cops, they should be calling out the judges should be calling out the attorneys, and it's this code of protection that they're all just big actors in our court system, and they're not calling each other out, and they're not doing their job as the law is written, because they're just not following it. And caught up in this are people who are just out there outraged over the injustice, and they're getting arrested and they're getting dragnetted into the system. So, you know, the plea deal is a big deal to me. I can see why people get pressured, but I think that it's shameful if you look at a county and the pleas that are going through the criminal court system. That speaks volumes to me. But the other thing that I wanted to really, I think that hit home for me last week when we were talking about the police officers, the poisonous fruit, and how that connects to family courts. You know, we were talking earlier about what people are being fined and sanctioned in family courts, and what they're paying attorneys to, you know, to represent them just in a divorce. And when you hire a divorce attorney in Santa Clara County for a middle-class family, I've heard retainer fees as much as $50,000, and people getting billed $50,000, $100,000 from an attorney just to get a divorce. And if that divorce is based on, and what we're seeing happen a lot in what they call private judging, if that's based on evidence that was unlawfully obtained, bad actors such as attorneys who are acting as private judges, then that creates void orders too, and a lot of people may be paying attorneys and paying sanctions for something that isn't their fault, because the orders in their divorce case, not only just unfair, but they're legally void because they came from it. Is that clear to you? Do you see that connection too?
Yeah. Any order that's issued that doesn't follow the law, that doesn't follow the procedures that you have to follow in order to issue that order, is a void order. It's not enforceable, or at least, you know, again, theoretically. It's just a matter of if you can get a judge to follow the law to enforce that.
And the problem is, when people try to get the orders voided, the attorneys are protecting the judges, and the judges are protecting the attorneys, and nobody wants to admit that this is going on in our family courts. So if we won't admit what's going on in our criminal courts, it's even more shameful that we won't admit what's going on in our family courts. So that's going to be our project. We're really blending these groups together, and we're going to look to the auditors to help us how we start getting more transparency. Recording attorneys, where can you record in court? This week you found some information about recording in the courthouses that was very fascinating, as far as what is on the Judicial Council website about courts that allow recording and what they're doing with that.
Was the equipment, which courts were buying equipment? They have to track all the equipment courts buy to record in the courtrooms, and that's what they do. And so you can see that they're doing it in a lot of courthouses, even though they don't usually want people to know that.
So they're buying the recording equipment, they're recording, they have the ability to record, but the videos that they're making in those courthouses are not public. So they're using public funds, they're buying recording equipment, and we still don't get to see the video. Is that right?
Yep.
So that's going to be our project. We're going to start looking at how we blend what the auditors are doing and what the family court folks have been talking about for the past 5 years, and that's what we're going to try to.
Yeah, and the other part about the recording aspect is that the Commission on Judicial Performance, which is the state agency that oversees judges, that's responsible for judge misconduct, that disciplines judges. It's the only place you can go if a judge commits misconduct, is the Commission on Judicial Performance. And yet they will tell the legislature that one of the reasons they can't do their job is because there's no there's no recordings of the court proceedings where people are complaining about. They've said that for years and years, and yet, and we think that's not necessarily true. It might even just be flat out lie, because when you look at these other documents over at the Judicial Council and all this recording equipment that's in all these courthouses, you say, well, wait a minute, what about all these recordings? So the CJP, which is part of the problem, because they're pretending like there's no recordings when we know there are recordings. So it's just all the way to the top. There's nobody that's accountable.
And we know from the California State Auditor, Elaine Howell, that she audited the CJP and found huge problems with what they were doing. And one of the things she said, very basic, hey, they don't even put out complaint forms. And I hear from people all the time, if they want to complain about a judge or they don't understand what's happening in court, where do they file a complaint? Nobody even knows that. So we're going to talk about that more. How do you complain about police officers to internal affairs? How do you complain about attorneys to the state bar? And how do you complain about judges? And where is the oversight and the accountability for the folks not doing their jobs?
Good.